Esarith curled her tail around her trembling kittens, pressing them against her body in a desperate attempt to keep them warm. The cold metal floor beneath her drained the heat from her already weakened form, and her once proud fur was caked in filth. She had stopped trying to groom herself days ago. What was the point? Her body was failing, her strength fading, and the scent of death clung to her like a second skin. The dim red light of the slave hole flickered above, casting jagged shadows along the rusted walls. Chains rattled as she shifted slightly, the heavy collar around her neck biting into her flesh. She had tried to resist once, tried to fight, but the Sarconi had beaten the rebellion out of her. Now, all she had left was the tiny, fragile life of her 3 kittens. Their mewling cries had softened over the past few days, turning weaker, fainter. They were starving, and her body could no longer produce enough milk. Soon, they would fall silent. A dull vibration rumbled through the ship's hull, a reminder that they were still traveling through the vast emptiness of space. Each passing moment brought them closer to their destination, some nameless black market world where she and her babies would be auctioned off like trinkets. The Sarconi didn't see the Zarnathi as people, only as property, rare, exotic creatures to be bought and sold. She had heard the slavers talking. The kittens were the real prize, young, easy to train, perfect for wealthy buyers who wanted obedient pets. They had mocked her openly, speaking of how they would separate her from them, how they would break them, how she would never see them again. The thought alone was worse than death. Her mate had fought. He had died screaming. She had been forced to watch, the scent of his blood thick in the air as the Sarconi tore him apart. A warning, a lesson. Resist, and this is what happens. She had not fought after that, not until she had given birth. But by then it was too late. She buried her nose into the fur of her smallest kitten, breathing in his fragile scent. The soft rise and fall of his tiny chest was barely noticeable. He wouldn't last much longer. None of them would. A Sarconi guard passed a row of cages, his spindly legs clicking against the floor. He didn't even glance at her. She was beneath notice, just another piece of cargo. Ezra closed her eyes, her body curling tighter around her young. She had no strength left. She had failed them, and soon they would all be gone. A shudder rippled through the ship, faint at first, then growing into a violent tremor that sent dust and loose debris scattering across the cold metal floor. Esarith's ears twitched, her instincts flaring despite her exhaustion. The deep hum of the engines faltered. The overhead lights flickered. Something was wrong. A distant explosion thundered through the corridors, followed by the rapid clicking of Sarconi feet, scrambling in panic. Shouts in their chittering language echoed through the air, frantic and sharp. The slavers were afraid. Esarith lifted her head, her muscles screaming in protest. Was this another raid? Another band of pirates looking to steal cargo? If so, it didn't matter. One set of chains would only be replaced with another. Then the heavy blast doors slid open. A figure stepped inside, haloed by the dying red light of the emergency beacons. It wasn't a Sarconi. It wasn't another slaver. It was a human, tall, armored, and armed. He moved with lethal efficiency. Smoke curled from the barrel of his rifle, his visor reflecting the chaos outside. His chest rose and fell unsteady. Controlled breaths. Blood, some of it Sarconi, streaked across the dark plates of his combat suit, but if he was wounded, he didn't show it. Esarith stiffened. Humans were rare, but she knew of them. Traders spoke of their worlds, of their strange ways. But the Sarconi whispered of something else, something fearful. Humans were unpredictable, uncontrollable, and this one had come for war. He moved swiftly, scanning the cages, his gaze sharp and calculating. When his eyes locked onto her, he stopped. The rifle lowered slightly. He took in the collar around her neck, the chains binding her to the floor, the frail bundles nestled against her. His expression was hidden behind his helmet, but she saw the way his shoulders tensed. He knew what this was. His free hand moved, pulling something from his belt, a compact plasma cutter. Esarith flinched as he stepped closer. No one had ever approached her with anything but cruelty. She bared her teeth weakly, a useless warning. He ignored it. A sharp hiss filled the air as the plasma blade met metal, slicing through the chains in seconds. Sparks rained down, but he was careful, keeping the heat away from her and the kittens. The moment the last link fell apart, her body sagged forward, freed for the first time in months. The human didn't hesitate. He crouched beside her, his armored arms sliding beneath her body, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. His other hand pulled free a strip of cloth, bundling the kitten securely against his chest. She should have resisted. She didn't, because for the first time since her capture, she felt something unfamiliar, something she had forgotten existed. Hope. The ship was dying. The alarm screamed overhead, drowning out the distant wails of panicked Sarconi. Fire raged somewhere in the lower decks, the scent of scorched metal thick in the air. The walls trembled with each new explosion, systems failing one by one. Jason Hale didn't slow. With Aerith draped across his back and her kitten secured to his chest, he moved through the corridors with relentless precision. His rifle was up, his fingers steady on the trigger. Every step, every turn, every movement was calculated. No wasted motion, no hesitation. A Sarconi guard rounded the corner ahead. Hale fired. The plasma bolt hit center mass, dropping the slaver instantly. Another surged forward, mandibles clicking in fury, claws raised to strike. Hale twisted, using the dead guard's body as a shield before firing again. The second Sarconi collapsed, its body twitching. Aerith watched, stunned. He wasn't the fastest. He wasn't the strongest. But he fought with something else, something the Sarconi lacked. Every action was deliberate. Every shot mattered. Even injured, he never hesitated. Another explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered again, dimming as the backup power struggled to keep up. The intercom crackled to life, a guttural voice screeching orders in the Sarconi tongue. Hale grimaced. They're sealing off the hangar. Aerith didn't understand the words, but she understood the urgency in his voice. He moved faster. A blast door loomed ahead, its control panel flashing red. Locked. Hale shifted her weight slightly, reaching for his wrist console. His fingers moved quickly over the device, overriding the system. The door groaned, resisting, then lurched open. Gunfire erupted from the other side. Hale barely managed to pull back, a plasma round grazing his shoulder. He hissed in pain, but his grip on her never loosened. A Sarconi enforcer stood at the far end of the corridor, bulkier than the others, its armor thick and reinforced. It chittered something in its language, raising a heavy pulse rifle. Hale's jaw clenched. He wasn't going to win this fight head-on. He glanced at the exposed wiring near the doorframe. Aerith saw the shift in his expression, the calculation, the understanding. A plan formed in mere seconds. Hale raised his rifle and fired, not at the enforcer, but at the exposed conduit above. The shot hit perfectly. Sparks exploded as the wiring shorted, sending a surge of energy through the ceiling. A moment later, the emergency vent systems activated, releasing a sudden blast of pressurized gas. The force sent the Sarconi enforcer stumbling, its shot going wide. Hale didn't waste the opportunity. He surged forward, ignoring the pain in his shoulder, and closed the distance in a blink. He struck low, slamming his rifle but into the enforcer's leg joint, forcing it down. Another quick movement, his combat knife flashing in the dim light, before he drove it into the slaver's throat. The Sarconi gurgled, its massive body twitching before it collapsed. Hale exhaled, adjusting his grip on her. Not much time left. Aerith didn't know how she understood him, but she did. He would not stop. He would not abandon her. And for the first time, she believed they might survive. The hangar was in chaos. Sarconi slavers scrambled to escape, their ships already lifting off, abandoning their own as the vessel collapsed around them. Flames licked at the walls, and the acrid scent of burning fuel filled the air. The ship's automated defenses had failed. Jason Hale had made sure of that. But one last obstacle stood between them and freedom. The final blast door to the docking bay was sealed shut, reinforced by the Sarconi's last-ditch security measures. Beyond it, Hale's ship, his only way out, waited, engines primed, its sleek frame untouched by the destruction around them. Aerith could barely hold on. Her body was failing, her strength gone, but she could still feel the steady rhythm of Hale's heart against her side, the warmth of her kitten secured against his chest. He wasn't giving up. He set her down carefully, leaning her against a crate before pressing a hand against his wrist console. His fingers moved fast, bypassing security, overriding the lock. A countdown flashed on the panel. 30 seconds before the door would give. That was 30 seconds too long. The last remaining Sarconi enforcers had gathered behind them, realizing too late that their prisoners had become a threat. They hissed in fury, their weapons raised. Hale moved instantly. He pivoted, raising his rifle, firing in controlled bursts. Each shot hit its mark: knees, chests, throats. Slavers collapsed, but more kept coming. His magazine clicked empty. He dropped it without pause, drawing a sidearm. The smaller weapon barked with sharp, precise shots, cutting down 2 more before a pulse round grazed aside, sending him stumbling. Esarith tried to move, tried to help, but she was too weak. The door's countdown hit 5 seconds. 4, 3. Hale gritted his teeth, his free hand reaching for something at his belt. A compact explosive charge. He hurled it toward the remaining slavers. 2. He turned, shielding her with his body. 1. The explosion roared behind them, drowning out the final alarm as the blast door finally gave way. The docking bay opened before them, revealing the sleek black frame of Hale's ship, its ramp already lowering. The slavers were gone. The Sarconi ship was collapsing. Hale wasted no time. He lifted Esarith once more, sprinting forward as debris crashed down around them. The moment his boots hit the ramp, the ship systems activated, closing the hatch behind them. The engines roared to life. Esarith barely registered the smooth hum of the ship lifting off. The overwhelming sense of movement, of acceleration, of breaking free. It was too much. Her vision blurred. Her body sagged. The last thing she felt was the warmth of Hale's arms, holding her close, steady and unwavering. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid. Darkness took her. When she awoke, she was warm. Soft blankets surrounded her. The scent of clean air and metal filled her lungs, so different from the filth she had known. Her body ached, but it no longer screamed with pain. A gentle sound reached her ears. Her kittens, stronger now, federal safe. And then another sound, boots against the floor. Jason Hale stood nearby, arms crossed, watching her with the same quiet intensity he had carried through the battle. His armor was gone, replaced by a simple undershirt. The bandages on his side proved the price he had paid for their escape. Esarith met his gaze. He had no reason to save her, no reason to fight. And yet he had, for the first time in her life, she understood why the Sarconi fear humans. Because when all others abandoned hope, when all others turned away, a human stayed, and that made all the difference.